Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. There's so much going on with Cyberpunk 2077. The marketing campaign is hitting an absolute fever pitch. They are doing an excellent job of turning weaknesses into strengths, into really just doing a true reversal. A thing that's really hard to do, but they have done perfectly, that is working super well. And also, where Nvidia have stepped in and actually showed off an interesting angle of their technology that I think does show a very strong use case when it comes to how games are actually experienced by the press, and also does continue to show a very strong case for how game demos could be easily done. Oh, and then of course there is the funky, censorship in Japan situation, and also the cut content drama from this game that I think is something that we can talk about, but probably it's okay to let him get away with. Anyway, that's what's in today's video. Of course, like and sub really does help us out. If you want to help out a bit more and also get some sweet loot in your post box, then the Patreon is the place for that. So thanks for choosing to watch this video, and with that, let's get into it. Alright, so we're going to kick it off today with the marketing madness that has been, I think, one of the greatest successes that we have seen in recent times, and one that really has actually, well, exploited its problems in a way. So, we're going to start off, of course, with Night City Wire, which, the first episode of which went live last week, a little bit before that, and it's a series that's going to keep on going until the game actually does release, following, of course, the delay until November. Now, this worked really well. They had a big, action-packed trailer that turned out to all be footage from the game's prologue only, which certainly is something that's going to be exciting. It's going to tease a massive amount of content to people, which will, of course, have went down really well. Then, of course, there's the interesting news. There is Cyberpunk Edge Runners, so there's a TV show now, and also the free next-generation upgrade. Now, I'm actually glad that we're doing this video a little bit after the news happened, because that flies in the face of what some other companies have done. Because this free next-gen upgrade seems to be a bit different to just doing smart delivery, and if you look at, say, NBA 2K21, well, the next-gen version costs $70, and if you want it both on current and next-gen, you've got to buy the $100 special edition. Very much not the case here, and that will go down very well with people, especially if that free next-gen upgrade, I guess, if there is going to be an equivalent of, like, say, The Last of Us remastered, right? Like a big new one for the next-gen. If that's not industry standard being included with your purchase now, this will look super good for CD Projekt Red. Now, in terms of what really, I think, captured the imagination with this, it was the braindance gameplay. I think that went down really, really well. Kind of reminds me of like a really scaled up version of like the forensics gameplay in Condemned, which is really damn exciting. And while this was, scripted tutorial stuff, it seemed like there was a breadth of options there. And I think it's a feature that could allow for a lot of interesting narrative exploration with you just being able to sort of relive other characters. It means they can actually insert sort of more little circumstantial stories into Night City, which once again just does tease the scope and the scale and the depth, which really is the thing that they are getting massive wins by just hammering on. So all of that happened, but then they did the abnormal thing, and this is actually technologically abnormal as well. That's why it's newsworthy, and that is the GeForce Now hands-on. And this, you've seen the thumbnails, right? People, on YouTube, I played X minutes of this and I was blown away. Just about every YouTuber who's on their press list has done some sort of video like that, and seemingly all to just incredible views and tremendous success, and this has been done very, very intelligently by them. So yeah, after doing Night City Wire, CDPR mentioned that basically the first sort of gameplay stuff would be going up pretty shortly, and it was. Now, this was a preview event with a difference, because normally what is done for a preview event is they'll fly a bunch of people out to a physical location, they will play the game, maybe under supervision, they might get some direct feed, and then they'll be able to do something. They can also be done, though, by just giving people a code for a digital download, right? But the thing is that thanks to lockdown, well, it's been tricky doing those big physical events, so smaller publishers have been giving people codes. But the thing is, there is a big risk in just giving people preview code, right? What if that preview build then got into somebody's hands and then could be data mined? That obviously poses a massive, security and spoilers risk for companies, and this is actually where one of their partners, Nvidia, have stepped in, because this preview event was actually done with Nvidia GeForce Now. And I think this does actually show a very useful, use case for that technology. If you're to imagine what happened here for a preview build of this game, send out to press in a secure manner, well, that would work incredibly well for game demos. And that's actually one of the things that Google Stadia mentioned that actually seemed good. The instant demos, that sort of idea. Of course, the Stadia, it's a pity, though, that they launched with really nothing that good, and the things that could have been exciting are seemingly missing from the product, which is a bit rough. But this certainly is a good look for Nvidia. Now, the preview... I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, doing a preview via digital download code for Cyberpunk 2077, can you imagine the file size of that download? So I think that doing this via GeForce Now is an incredibly good option. Now, the likes of, say, The Verge did report a few stutters. Eurogamer noted that there was a bunch of compression, but everybody still agreed that the game itself looked stunning and ended up playing pretty darn well with negligible latency, which certainly is interesting. I mean, in the office, at least, we have had good experiences with GeForce Now. So there you go. The game was, what people said, surprisingly playable. And they got the first chance to play Cyberpunk 2077, albeit sort of on a virtual machine, which a lot of people did know being a little bit sad about. But ultimately here, this is a massive victory for CD Projekt Red. They were able to do a pretty unique type of preview that if you've been anywhere near YouTube for the last while, you will know that has went incredibly well, generating likely millions of dollars worth of free press. So that's been a big win. And then for Nvidia, it's actually shown off another use case for their technology, and again got that technology into people's minds, with of course it being notable that while loads of publishers were pulling out of GeForce Now, well, what happened? Cyberpunk said, no, we're going to be on GeForce Now. So a big win for both parties, and certainly an incredible marketing move. But that said, there has been a bit of drama, and that is because of wall running. So do you remember that really, really big voiceovered gameplay video that they did a long time, like 2 years ago? Well, that actually featured wall running, and it looked pretty cool. V ran up a wall to get to a new place, and it was kind of teasing verticality in the gameplay and the level design. That had a lot of people pretty excited, and that was back in 2018 in their 48-minute gameplay sliver. But CD Projekt Red have since confirmed that that has been removed because of design reasons. Now, that is an interesting situation, because on the one hand, that footage is nearly 2 years old, right? And it is an older version of the game, and games always do change in development because that's what iteration is. And iteration generally does make them, better and also more feasible. But then, of course, that was also a pretty exciting seeming thing for the game. So people are obviously disappointed that it's not going to be a thing. And I totally understand that disappointment. For design reasons, is interesting because if you have that in your toolkit, then you'll kind of have to design every space to actually be viable, to make wall running be a thing that is a relevant core part of your game. And if it's something that's impacting movement, well, traversal is going to be very core to the game, especially if you want to have sort of Deus Ex Mankind divided levels of immersive sim level design where there really is a lot of richness in the spaces that you go through. So it could have just been too hard to have done every single part of the game with that in mind. It also could be the case that if you give players maybe an overpowered feeling tool, that it could break some designs by changing the constraints the player's dealing with. So I understand how that could have been an extremely hard design decision to make to actually cancel it, because it did seem cool, but also an extremely hard design to actually implement across a game of such a massive scope. But ultimately, though, if you actually look at game trailers, there is a reason why, even when pre-orders and stuff are going, if you actually look at those trailers, it always says work in progress, does not represent or necessarily represent the final version of the game. I think it's exactly things like this that are why that is done. Now, it is an interesting thing, because at that point, they probably fully did intend for that feature to have made it into the game. I think where it gets a bit more iffy, though, is whenever people sort of see a trailer as being like a bullshot, right? Bullshot's, a BS screenshot that makes a game look better than it is. Good examples being, of course, Watch Dogs, right? Where that's a situation with Watch Dogs where, did they really know? Did they know that they weren't actually able to achieve those visuals on the consoles? And that's why they killed it, especially when people then found out you could easily turn on the cool visual effects from their E3 demo via config file on PC, because they basically left the features in. It's times like that where it rings a bit more of, is this false advertising? Were they making that look better than it actually was going to be, realistically speaking? Whereas I think with this, if it's a design thing, I can understand the cutting a fair bit more. So there's that drama, but there also is a bit of another drama in censorship. Yes, turns out if you want to have a bunch of squidgy bits in your video game, well, you can have issues, and one of those places will be Japan, who are very, very interesting in how they deal with things like that, because a lot of their media is extremely okay with showing a lot of sexuality, but not very, very okay with showing, some of the more, the more graphically detailed aspects of the results of said sexuality, you could maybe say. Trying to keep this one a little bit more ad-friendly. But basically, in the game, naked characters will wear underwear, the explicit content will be revised, and some of the extreme gore will be selectively revised as well, and then graffiti and billboards that would have any of those said squishy bits from downstairs, they will be changed such that they are not present in the game. Basically, in Japan, it is illegal to display obscene materials, but that obscenity is extremely ill-defined, and that's why you've got this weird situation where on the one hand, you see some pretty damn far out stuff coming from over there and going around over there, but also a whole bunch of pretty strongly enforced rules there as well, in terms of what is allowed to be sort of depicted visually in a very clear manner, you could maybe say. So yeah, basically it's getting some censorship in Japan. But what is a bit interesting as well is Australia, because oddly enough, it's not going to be censored there. And that's weird because Australia is notoriously strict when it comes to adult content. There's games like DayZ, Katana Zero, We Happy Few. Those are games that were actually refused rating at various stages, and Australian gamers, as well as having to deal with games being really expensive, have just had loads of games that they've not been able to purchase because of the way the Australians rating boards actually function. So it really sucks for them. Even say for CDPR, they had to modify Witcher 2 to actually have it fit the MA15 plus rating in Australia. So that's the rating situation. And overall, I think as we want to draw this video to a close, our sort of recap of what the hell's been going on with Cyberpunk 2077, I think it's just interesting to talk about why people are so excited and how their marketing has worked so well, because if you've got this game that everyone thinks is going to be absolutely massive, right, and then, it gets delayed, and that keeps on happening, it's interesting, because if you're Ubisoft, if you're Activision, people are going to be pissed at you. But the thing is that, CD Projekt Red have got such a good community perception. They were really good with GeForce Now. Even Witcher 2 Enhanced Edition, where they just did so much work in the game to make it better and then gave it to all existing customers for free. They've got a long history of actually engendering goodwill with their customers. And that means that, where some companies will be blasted, right, for delays, for disappointing people, a little bit of that will still happen for CD Projekt Red, but people will generally be like, oh, those are our guys, right? And, they're trying as hard as they can. That'll be the sort of perception there, and you can really see this working, because you've got all of this fever pitch hype already, then you've got delays, and when those delays happen, that's a situation where information on this game is such a high value that then if you just say that people can, do a 20-minute sliver of the game and then talk about it on their YouTube channel, you've seen the views, right? They have played this so damn well. I don't know if I've ever seen such a successful marketing campaign from a grassroots word of mouth situation. It really is word of mouth that I think is strong here, because one person tells two people, each one of those people, it can really expand. And I think this is a game where that really is going to happen and where the sales are going to be absolutely incredible. Now, there is the other side of that where there's a bunch of companies like, say, Naughty Dog, people did not have as good of a perception of them maybe. So when their working condition reports came out via Jason Schreier, yeah, people really went hard at Naughty Dog. But then you got a situation where CD Projekt Red have also had many allegations about crunch and things like that. And they're far more able to get away with it, even though realistically speaking, all of these delays have probably just meant a year of crunch, like a year of Deathmarch tier. Deathmarch is what some devs in the AAA side of things have sort of used to explain the situation where you're crunching to when you think your release date is, and that crunch can be 80-hour weeks or, even more sometimes. But then, it's delayed 3 months, and you just still have to crunch for all of that period of time. So that stuff's happening, which really is unfortunate. I'm sure, though, if there is enough for a big journalistic piece to be done, I'm sure it will get out there. So for the most part, I'm willing to just wait until something happens there. But we have seen, the various smaller reports come out. But we also have seen Marcin Lewinsky and his is the co-founder. We have seen them publicly reaffirm wanting to do better there, and some of the initiatives they have done. So it could be the case that we'll see some staff who said, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but with Cyberpunk, it was better than Witcher 3. So hard to know, but it certainly is an angle to talk about when we're covering this company, obviously. I mean, it is interesting because you've got, the likes of these guys, you've got Rockstar, who can sort of, they just really have that community side. And then in the publishing wing, you've got the likes of Devolver Digital, where people can say, I'm a Devolver Digital fan, whereas they're maybe going to say, I like Assassin's Creed, but I'm not an Ubisoft fan. So it is interesting how that sort of cultural angle of how we experience these companies actually does sort of come out. So there you go. Overall, really, it's funny. They have turned their road bumps into hype. And ultimately, that's really what the best businesses are able to do. They're able to turn something that's not ideal into an opportunity, and they certainly have done that quite well. So basically, to close, there's an interesting censorship situation with Japan. We've got the cut content, wall running stuff, which I think is something that is sort of fine to let them get away with. It's not even a case of getting away with. It's like stuff changes during iteration. There's probably a very good reason, realistically, why that feature is not going to be shipped. And then we've got the situation of Cyberpunk, of CD Projekt Red, and the community just sort of, all coming together to perfectly execute their marketing campaign. So a very interesting situation. I'd love to know, has this worked in you? Are you just creaming for this game? Is that what's going on? I feel like that's going to be the case with a lot of people. So if you are, do let me know, and let me know why. And has this recent sliver of gameplay actually worked? I mean, I'll be real, whenever I click on those videos, scroll through them, and I just saw the car going around, I was like, I'm in. So it just hit me with that immediate emotional, I've got it. So it certainly worked for me. I'd be interested if it worked, or I'd be interested in seeing if it worked for you. So thanks for watching. Of course, there's lots more stuff on the channel if you want more stuff for your ears to be doing. So you can check that out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.